Hi, this evening we're following up on the situation in Myanmar, which frankly should tug at our collective conscience, but the silence around it is deafening. We've relied on independent sources like Y Nu, the founder of Myanmar's Women's Peace Network, as also organizations like Reuters that are reporting from the ground. A quick recap. 2 months ago, after losing in the national elections, the military overthrew the Aung San Suu Kyi government in a coup. They took over before a new session of parliament could begin. The military is facing every day an extraordinary resistance from the civilian population. A large demographic is young and wants a return to democracy. The military has resorted to murder, arson, forced disappearances, detentions, torture, and much more. In fact, since the 1st of February, at least 510 civilians have been killed, and that's according to a tally that's been put by the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, AAPP. It's an advocacy group. On Saturday, senior generals of the junta celebrated the Armed Forces Day. It was complete with a lavish dinner, a fireworks display, a drone show. On the same day, its men killed at least 141 civilians, including a 5-year-old child. The injured were too many to count. Now, India was among the 8 countries that attended that dinner. We'll tackle what that means in just a bit. But remember, the bloodbath didn't stop on Saturday. In fact, on Sunday, at least 20 more civilians were killed. Yesterday, that is Monday, another 14 were killed. Reuters is in fact reporting that security personnel may have upgraded their weapons to grenade launchers. Let's get you a sample of what eyewitnesses have told various reporters from various organizations that are reporting from the ground. In the city of Mandalay, troops burned a street vendor alive, witnesses told the reporter from The Guardian. A rescue worker told Myanmar Now that they're shooting to kill without the slightest provocation, including at shadows and dogs. Another witness told the Reuters that they're shooting at everything on the road, even a Red Cross team. CBS is reporting even school children have been killed while simply sitting at home. Now, Myanmar's ethnic armed groups that have historically clashed with the military for greater autonomy have so far largely remained silent about the coup and about the military's atrocities. But 3 of them, in a joint statement, have asked the military to stop killing protesters, or else they will join what they called Myanmar's Spring Revolution. In fact, clashes have already begun near the Thai border, and at least 3,000 villagers have fled to Thailand. About 2,000 have been sent back by Thailand's army. That's because of the Thailand's government's policy to not allow them through. Does that sound familiar? Well, as we know, in India, the center has asked the northeastern states which share a border with Myanmar and the Assam Rifles to locate and deport any Myanmar nationals that are trying to enter India. The Manipur government has finally withdrawn a shameful circular that had asked district officials to make sure that Myanmar nationals were not given even the most basic assistance, that of food and shelter. I think it's the perfect juncture in this video to talk about India's policy towards Myanmar. Many of you argued in your comments to our earlier video about how India can simply not afford to take these refugees. Let me say this much. There is merit to that argument. Helping refugees is not costless, and one country alone cannot do it. But the big question is, are we ready to ignore a humanitarian crisis that's unfolding in our backyard and remain indifferent? Our response so far has been rather short and cryptic. One statement that New Delhi is concerned about the political turmoil in Myanmar, and that's it. So no call to stop the violence, nothing against the military, nothing against the coup. One reason perhaps that can be attributed for this somewhat timid response is that we've engaged with the Myanmar military in the past, since the early 90s. Their support to fighting insurgency in India's northeast has been crucial. And therefore, on Saturday, as the military unleashed the bloodiest day of violence in Myanmar, 8 nations attended a lavish dinner and a military parade that was organized by the junta, and India was one of them. China and Russia were also at the parade, both countries reaffirming that they will continue to supply the military with arms. Now, with China and Russia coming into this mix, obviously the stakes are very, very high. Every country is eyeing the situation in Myanmar really in terms of geopolitical gains. The Myanmar military, in a sense, has many more options for support, which is why some experts suggest that the way for India is to actually continue to engage with the military and continue to close its borders to the refugees. There is also a case, as many others have written, on the other side of the spectrum for India to stand out, morally and otherwise. The reasons for that: number one, the protests for democracy in Myanmar are widespread. They're mainly led by the young. Number two, and it's an important one, when our states like Manipur and Mizoram call for a more humane approach to this crisis and Delhi either rejects or dismisses that thought and sentiment, it potentially signals to these states their marginality in our discourse and our calculations. I'm paraphrasing a little bit from a piece by Avinash Paliwal, who teaches at SWAS. Number three, possibly, India wants a role in shaping a response to this crisis and the transition whenever it happens. And so it needs to have credibility with all the groups, different groups, including the military, but also the protesters. Number four, yes, this approach is going to be risky, but when we respond by closing our borders to men, women, and children who are facing persecution, it sends a signal, and that's not necessarily a signal of strength. I'll stop here, leaving you with a sense of what observers are predicting for the days ahead, unless the ASEAN and the entire international community wake up. They're saying more brute violence by the military in the days ahead. More bloodshed as protesters are going to arm themselves in self-defense. Economic sanctions notwithstanding, the military likely to grow stronger and remain united. Number four, a sense that the crackdown is now pushing people beyond fear. And number five, that yes, mass protests will continue to be repressed, but students and activists and the young who are fighting could take to the forests and join the armed groups. And that's a situation perhaps that doesn't augur well, neither for the region nor for India. We believe Myanmar is a newsworthy story. Pallavi and self are keen to understand whether it worked for you or not. Do drop in a comment wherever you're seeing this video, and do share it with your friends and family. We'll see you again very soon.